Welcome back. This is Morning Express, and in case you're just joining us, we are on your health segment of the program, and we're discussing postpartum depression. Now, this is a condition that often affects mothers who've just given birth, owing to some differences in their body that may affect their mood, and of course them being overwhelmed. That does not help the matter. Now, let's take a look at some of the causes of postpartum depression. Now, professionals do tell us that after giving birth, a dramatic drop in the hormones may contribute to postpartum depression. Other hormones produced by the thyroid gland also may drop sharply, which can leave one feeling tired, sluggish, and also depressed. Now, also other issues that may occur during postpartum depression: when you're feeling sleep deprived and you're overwhelmed by the many responsibilities that come with taking care of a newborn, you might have trouble handling the minor problems, and therefore anxiety creeps in. You may be anxious about your ability to care for the newborn. You may feel less attractive. You may struggle with some sense of identity, or feel that you've lost control over your life. Any of these issues may also contribute to that problem of postpartum depression, and of course these symptoms should lead one to seek for help. And of course other symptoms of that include feeling depressed and having severe mood swings, and getting perhaps into fights with your loved ones, and not just being the same person you were mood-wise. And after giving birth, you can also experience excessive crying, and over issues that perhaps you might have handled without crying. You might feel like you're crying about everything. Like our guest told us earlier on, she just melted down into tears after seeing the psychologist the first time. You might also experience difficulty bonding with your baby. Now, naturally, breastfeeding and interacting with your child might lead to a natural bond, but if you're feeling a difficulty bonding with your newborn, you might be a victim of postpartum depression. A loss of appetite also is another indicator that there is a problem, and you might need psychological help. Also, overwhelming fatigue and a loss of energy. Sleep deprivation also is a problem and might contribute to this, but an overwhelming feeling of fatigue and loss of energy might be a symptom of postpartum depression. Intense irritability and anger coupled with those extreme mood swings is another symptom. Severe anxiety, panic attacks, thoughts of harming yourself and your baby are an indicator of a problem that needs to be solved. And in case you're experiencing this sort of symptoms, you need to be getting professional help. So go to your nearest medical facility and get some help. Now, speaking of getting help, Dr. Tanui, I would like you to come in and tell us what is it about we Africans that makes us fear going to seek help? Is it that we're afraid of being labeled crazy? But then if you stay with this, like we heard earlier in the symptoms, if you stay with this condition long enough, it might lead you to harming yourself and harming your baby. So what have you experienced with people suffering postpartum depression?
People find it hard to ask for help because asking for help is termed as a sign of weakness, and it's also like embarrassing to sit down with a stranger and share about your issues. It's like you are not able to handle them, and you need to be strong, you need to face it on and move on. And it's like a mental issue will just reduce on its own. Probably when you have a headache, you'll go out and get a painkiller and the headache will go down. But when it comes to mental issues, they're so negative about it. They find it like it's embarrassing. So that's the main struggle we have right now.
And do we even know where to go to start with? That's another question.
The problem, people may actually live with a condition and they don't know. They don't know, like probably it's depression, and they feel maybe I just have a low mood, I'll do something, I'll go out and maybe it will get over. But there's that need for the environment around us to notice that when someone is depressed, they actually need help.
Dr. Kinge, we are told it takes a village to raise a child, but in today's society you might only be able to afford your spouse and perhaps a random nanny that you hired to help with the physical things. So sometimes, what do you think today's society does to contribute to us not being able to red flag some of these symptoms?
I think the way we live especially in the city, because there's quite a bit of strain to the mothers, and I've seen this even with childhood problems, problems with the neonate. mothers have no one to tell them that this is how a baby should feed, this is how a baby should sleep, this is how you wash a baby, this is how you dress a baby. So you have this mother, a very young mother, who is married to a very young man, and they have no one to guide them on the basic things on how to take care of a baby. So just that in itself is enough to get a mother very stressed out, and and especially if the child falls sick, it becomes even more difficult for the mother to cope, because then she is caring more about what is going on with the baby, and she does not even have the energy to take care of herself.
Ms. Kehusa, your foundation, your organization, Still a Mom, provides a sort of village that we are saying we do not have, that gives support. Have you been able to somewhat bridge that gap in which we provide mothers with a safe community that can help them cope with some of the difficulties that come with giving birth?
I'd say we have. We are not yet there, but we have in two ways. One is providing accurate information, especially in the era of social media that I may have mentioned. Everyone seems to not be struggling. So if you're home and you're struggling and you're crying and you're feeling overwhelmed, but all the photos you see on Instagram are people with their perfect, happy babies, it's really stressful. So to counter that is we are providing correct information about postpartum depression and any other conditions, and the true nature of motherhood and parenting, you know, with its messiness, and and that there's a messy house, and we're giving all that information. At the same time, we're talking about that it's a mood disorder. It may actually be a mental condition, and therefore you may need to go get help. So that's one of them. That's providing accurate information so that people know where they are at. And then number two is actually now providing the actual village. And here we do support groups. We do also individual therapy. So that, actually later on this month we'll be starting a new group for postpartum depression moms. This is a support group where you sit around in a circle, you share your stories, you realize you're not alone, and the therapy of peer support. Because there's one thing to seek individual counseling, just you and the counselor, and that's very important, especially if you're not ready for a group. But then there are people who feel like, I'd like to be in a group. There's a way it makes me realize I'm not alone. What I'm not facing is not foreign, and so we heal through that as well.
And there's a sort of comfort. And speaking of social media, obviously when people post things online, you're putting your best foot forward. Nobody's going to post the dirty diapers and the dirty house on social media. So it's obviously an exaggerated form of reality, because that is not accurate. But do you, when we're talking about forming societies, Still a Mom has a Facebook, an Instagram page, and do you support women actually going to join groups that help them talk it out and ask questions, because this is another alternative, I think.
It's actually one of the ways, it's actually how we got into the Facebook Community Leadership Program that happened last year. It's because of using social media for social good. So social media really is just a tool. It depends on how it's in whose hands. Whoever decides to use it for good or for evil. And so for us, we actually have forums on Facebook. We also have forums on WhatsApp, and we also have forums on Instagram as well. Just putting the people, like now we have a forum for moms who've lost a child. We have forums for moms who are pregnant after the loss of a child, because there are issues that are a little bit more unique. They are a bit more anxious because of rainbow babies. There are forums for women who have postpartum depression. And again, that sense of community. And someone may be at a point where they're not yet ready to come for help yet, because they're still processing the you be strong, So if that's a place for them to start before they can come for therapy, that's fantastic. That is, provided they have a community and they know that they're not alone.
It's a stepping stone. Now, Dr. Kinge, were you able to find your tribe or your community?
When it happened, I came to realize that I had a very severe knowledge deficiency on where to get help. Because then you realize I probably know one or two people who have undergone it. And when I talk to them, they're like, I just toughed it out, and it eventually
it just went away.
And you come to realize that because it's such a taboo topic, people don't want to discuss it. You don't actually find places where you can find your community, your support group, your people who actually can help you find that information. And so it actually becomes a point where, like when I was on the other side, I took it upon myself now to start now seeking out those who were also having problems and bringing them together. We form a WhatsApp group, and now if there's a new mom, we put you in and now start telling you, okay, this may happen, this is what you may expect. And it's very difficult for you to find places where someone will actually look for you and actually tell you that this is what to expect and bring you into the fold.
Okay.
So that's very difficult.
Miss Chepkoskei, not doctor. Now, I'm thinking about, we're talking about mothers who have had given birth, they've given life, but then they're having difficulty. But not every mother gets to that reality or that outcome of giving birth. Some women lose their children before they get to term, or some of them actually have stillbirths. Are these mothers also included in this circle of postpartum depression? Do they experience this, and are they acknowledged enough in society as people who are have a valid claim to ask for help when they experience this?
Yes, they will experience postpartum depression,
right?
Because the biological makeup will continue with its cycle.
Yes.
The hormones will still drop, and now here you're dealing with child loss, and you're also dealing with depression associated to the loss of your baby.
Yeah, so it's a two-pronged problem: depression as well as grief. So how does one cope with this? Because there's a problem with people acknowledging, because there's no child, so the people around you might not acknowledge that you have a legitimate problem, but then this is an actual problem. So how is it handled when it comes to that?
These women actually do need help, and it is important if they're able to acknowledge how they feel and be able to seek for help, because there's that need to process the exact feelings, the feeling of related to grief and the feeling related to postpartum depression. And it's overwhelming for this case because you're handling two things at a go. So reaching out for help, it's very important for them to process and to know exactly how they feel and how they're going to cope, and also to prevent possible postpartum psychosis developing, which is more advanced level of postpartum depression.
Now, and speaking of psychosis and the dangerous outcomes of postpartum depression, we read our papers daily and we see headlines such as Monster Mom and all these women who have committed certain crimes. And in my little research that I did learn that some women feel guilty about wanting to kill themselves because they're depressed. So they decide to solve that, they're going to take out the child. So how do you intervene with such severe cases, and what is your advice to a woman who's having this kind of thoughts in their mind?
When it comes to very severe, we call them psychosomatic symptoms, we really advise an emergency psychiatric review, whereby you can be put on antidepressant or antipsychotics, so that the symptoms can be destabilized and then get back to therapy, where we explore the underlying issues that led you to do that. But at first, the emergency medical treatment is very much recommended.
Now I'll come to you, Ms. Kihusa. You have an experience with the loss of a child and having to move on with that. So how did you handle both shifts, the hormonal changes as well as being in a process of grief, and how do you help women overcome this difficulty?
I think, and especially with late miscarriages and stillbirths, where there is actually a delivery that is involved and you don't go home with the baby, there's a lot of physical, not just the mental, just the physical, that a delivery happened and now you're supposed to be breastfeeding a baby, but the doctor is putting you on meds to stop the milk. So it's really a whole mess in your brain, and then there's this numbness because a lot of stuff is happening to you at the same time. And I think it was really important for us because my husband and I were actually brought for a counselor by the gynecologist before we were discharged. And we had I'd say probably an hour of therapy. It was a requirement our gynecologist required of us before we were discharged. And I find that when I look back, that was so important because she prepared me for all the things that I would feel. Like I think when I started to feel the things that I began to feel, I was a bit ready. And but I'm also happy that we took a long time to heal before we got our child. I feel like I was able to really process the losses, because I find that sometimes the solution is you want to get pregnant tomorrow,
just to
immediately, because there's this ache ache in your heart, yeah? And while that may give you joy, unprocessed grief is dangerous. Because the moment what happens, and I see this a lot with rainbow moms, is you're super anxious about this pregnancy because the other one did not go very well. And I remember struggling with my son, even after having so long to grieve, and I felt I had healed. But I remember struggling with him constantly. Whenever he slept, I'd put my finger under his nose just to make sure he was breathing. You know, because you've lost a baby before, and you know. And then also in our line of work, we're hearing these stories every single day. And so even things like separation anxiety, handing your baby over to somebody else to hold is a whole thing. And I think this is why we really do need the village. And even if it's just 3 people in your house, just for them to be in your space consistently so that you trust them. And you feel safe. And they say, you know what, bring the baby, I will feed the baby, you go sleep. It's super important. It's important. So I think that village was a very big help, because I know my sister was living with us at the time, and it was amazing. It was just amazing help. So getting someone who can do I'd say the work, the cooking, you know, a nanny, but also it's nice to have your husband or your partner or a family member that you trust. It's super important.
Dr. Kinge, you've told me that in your treatment you had to take pills. I mean, how did this help change? Because also taking pills, a lot of people, there's also a stigma about this, and people call it white people problem, rich people problems. I mean, nobody really wants to embrace this as an illness that can be handled by medication. How did this help with that and what you're going through?
In what you call the acute phase, in the immediate phase, it's very difficult, depending on the severity of your symptoms, it's very difficult to be able to internalize therapy and to be able to undergo the process of healing. If your symptoms are very severe, you may need some medication that will provide you some chemical balance, so that you can be able to now process whatever you're going through. And that was actually very important, because apart from the antidepressants I also got some sedatives to help me sleep, because the anxiety and the stress is so intense. Falling asleep may take you however long it takes your baby to sleep. So by the time you're starting to doze off, your baby is waking up, and now you are all up and about again, and it just becomes a very vicious cycle. So I know that there's quite a bit of stigma against taking medication. We say now she's a crazy person and she's married, material, so that's why she's being given mental medication. But it's very important that we internalize that health is health. We need social health, we need mental health, we need physical health, and without one you cannot have the others. So it's very important to accept that help and not trivialize what is going on and what you need to be that healthy, happy mom, because you also need to bond with your baby.
Happy mom, happy baby. Now, Ms. Tanui, I would like to understand, aside from the stigma, a lot of people fear that if I'm taking medication, this kind of medication, and I'm breastfeeding a child, am I breastfeeding the child these medicines? You know, that this stigma that goes around, that if you're taking this kind of medicine, then you might affect the baby's health because they're also consuming milk from you. So what do you feel about that, and would you dispel this type of assumptions?
What I'll encourage about that is working closely with your doctor, and for this case a psychiatrist, and let them know the place where you are, and I'm sure they will be able to recommend the ideal medication as per that stage, because I'm sure there are moms who are going through and they're being treated. So I'm sure with the psychiatrist we'll be able to help. So
in your work and in your experience, how long does one suffer through this? What are the extremes and what are the shortest times that you have had to work with a mother to get them out of the woods?
Every mother is unique, and it also depends with the level of depression they are going through, because postpartum depression develops at around 6 weeks after childbirth. So about 2 to 3 months during therapy, a mother can also start responding well to treatment, and about 6 months to medical treatment.
Could this be a lifetime condition, postpartum depression?
Yeah, it will take time.
But could it take somebody the rest of your life? Could you suffer from it for the rest of your life?
Not for the rest of your life, but it will take quite like 1 to 2 years probably talk therapy, but medication and year will do. And also there is the possibility of developing the postpartum in the second pregnancy if it was never dealt with in the first pregnancy.
One. Okay, so it's advisable to handle it with immediate effect. And Dr. Kinge, how long did it take for you to deal with it and just feel like your old self?
Well, that's a very difficult answer to give, because at the end of it, you have gone through something significant. So it's very difficult for you to go back to the person that you were before. It makes you more sensitive to your mood, to your emotions. You are more sensitive to sadness. You are more sensitive, also more empathetic to other people's feelings.
Absolutely.
But as far as that feeling that you're out of that depression, it took me probably 6 months. 6 months to start feeling like I am human again.
Yeah.
I like because at that time I was actually doing my postgraduate studies, and I was supposed to go back 3 months after having my child. But by the time I was able to get myself to go back to work, it was 10 months. My son was 10 months.
Wow.
And by the time I actually felt like those overwhelming feelings of love and like now I'm bonding with my son. He was probably around 7-8 months.
Wow.
So it's not a thing that you can rush yourself to heal. It takes time, but when you do come back, you will feel like sort of your old self.
Now, last but not least, Ms. Kihusa, I'm keen on it coming out that this is something that is normal. So what would you tell our listeners about postpartum depression or any other medical condition, mental, that has come out after they gave birth? What would you tell them to help them understand that this is normal, it could happen to anyone, and there is treatment that could give you the kind of life that you had, or the kind of life that you want to be just an optimum mom?
With regard to postpartum depression, for starters, I'd say first of all, motherhood is difficult.
Yeah.
You know, I know everyone paints the picture that it's not, but it's really hard because there's this tiny little human being and you're there everything. And moms need to realize that it's a big job. And so be kind to yourself if you're feeling overwhelmed. But with regards to mental health, there's something she said that was super powerful. And she said that, you know, we have social health, we have physical health, we have mental health, and all of them make up the whole you. So the same way you'd go, if you had malaria, you'd go to the hospital, and you wouldn't be like, I got this, you know, it's gonna go away. You would go to a professional. And that's how we will need to treat mental health conditions. Speak to your people, over coffee and over a glass of wine, if that's your kind of thing. But also, if you start to identify, you know, those symptoms that you mentioned, then go to therapy. There's nothing weak about that. See somebody. If they start out with talk therapy, if they feel that you would need medication, they will refer you to a psychiatrist. But this is absolutely normal. And for you to be happy, to go back to work, to be a good mom, to be a good partner, to be a good friend, you will need this for optimal health.
Okay, now as Michael Gitonga joins us, I would like you to just tell us, how can somebody access your platform so that they can get the kind of support that they need after they give birth?
So for if you would like to reach out to us as still a mom, like I said, we do maternal mental health. So that's child loss, postpartum depression, loss of any loved one. So our office number is 0743 708 336. 0743 708 336, and we are Still a Mom on Facebook, Still a Mom on Instagram, and Still a Mom Africa on Twitter. So you can talk to us on inbox. We're going to reach out. We're going to make sure someone calls you.
So the biggest point is get help. Whether if you're feeling off emotionally, mentally, if you're feeling overwhelmed, it's better to go get help and be told whether you're okay or not, instead of guessing or trying to be really just doing it on your own. That is it on our discussion on your health. Postpartum depression is normal. Please get help if you're feeling off. But that is it for today.
And congratulations to all the moms. I hope you guys had a good, happy Mother's Day. It's amazing what mothers go through just to make those little beings become what they are now. And